What's up guys, it is Sam here, and in today's video, as I explained in the previous one, it's going to be basically breaking down how expensive these countries are to travel in, the countries that I visited while I was away for the last 12 months. So I'm just going to explain a bit about like what the general costs are and like why it was that price in these countries, because there's kind of more specific reasons why things were more expensive, or you can do it cheaper, or just give a little bit of general advice around each country as well. So we're going to start with obviously the cheapest country and work towards the most expensive country that we traveled in. So it's going to be everything from your accommodation, your groceries, your transport, recreation and miscellaneous stuff as well. So I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to start with the cheapest country that we traveled in was Vietnam. So Vietnam came to a total of 43 euros per day, which is pretty good. Didn't really like hold back on spending or anything in Vietnam. Did everything that we wanted to do. Obviously missed a few things because you just can't do everything. But yeah, Vietnam is just extremely affordable. Like the beer is cheap, the food is cheap, transport's cheap. What is actually kind of expensive is going out on trips. So going out on day trips, like you're spending 50, 60 quid to do any kind of activity. So you kind of, if you're on a budget, you're going to have to pick and choose what you really want to do if you're there for a long period of time and you're there for like a month or more. So yeah, that's just one thing about Vietnam. It's very, very cheap. You could literally live there for like, I don't know, 8 to 1,000 euros a month, like no problem. If you're not doing tourist activities, like very, very easily. The next country, so this is a bit of a surprise, I think, couldn't be to most people, Taiwan. So Taiwan came to a total of 44 euros per day. This is like accommodation and all the rest of it. So one thing about Taiwan is we did stay in Airbnbs, which did bring down the price because it was like kind of shared communal areas where we did get to interact with the hosts and stuff, which was really, really good. And we got to talk to a lot of different people and get different perspective on things which we wouldn't have if we just stayed in hotels. So hotels in Taiwan are actually relatively expensive. So if you go into hotels, your budget will go higher. Also, if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, like if you're just on a holiday there, compared to the rest of Asia, it's quite expensive. But where it does make up for it, transport is cheap, food is extremely cheap and extremely good. So yeah, that's why Taiwan is there. Like, so we kind of cheaped out a bit on accommodation. Didn't drink that much there because there isn't much of a drinking culture there really. And just ate a load of food and it's just really cheap. So yeah, and just guys did a lot of free stuff, to be honest. Yeah, so I really like Taiwan and I can't recommend it enough, to be honest. And then videos will be coming out soon. Next is Malaysia. So Malaysia is known for being a very, very affordable country. We didn't drink that much there as well, so we didn't have that much expense. But look, it's a very, very affordable country. Like, you know, food is cheap, transport's cheap, Grab and stuff, all very, very cheap. So yeah, that came to 47.50 euros per day, all in. So yeah, that was pretty good. And we did activities and stuff. Activities are reasonably priced as well. You could potentially do more stuff than what we did, just because I was ill for a couple of days. But yeah, Malaysia is pretty affordable and there's a good bit to do. So next up is Laos at 49.80 euros per day. So yeah, basically 50 euros a day. Which is not too bad, I didn't think, really. The accommodation was surprisingly expensive in Laos because we weren't staying in hostels, but everything else is very, very cheap. We were eating at a little bit more expensive food places just because we were trying to avoid getting food poisoning. Yeah, so that was just the main concern there. But Laos, very, very affordable place to visit as well. Next up is actually the Philippines. So the Philippines was 55 euros per day, which is actually kind of surprising. When I was there, I thought this was going to be a lot more. Accommodation is not cheap in the Philippines. You've got to fly around the Philippines too, quite a lot, which brings up the price of everything. So yeah, the Philippines can be expensive. So sometimes we were maybe picking and choosing what we did, maybe not doing everything. The food there is relatively expensive because, again, you do not want to get food poisoning in the Philippines because it is meant to be very, very bad. So yeah, 55 euros per day in the Philippines is very, very reasonable. It could easily be a lot higher though. I think that one actually very, very much so surprised me. So yeah, if you're going there for a holiday, expect it to be more than that. Next up, Cambodia at 56 euros per day. Cambodia is surprisingly expensive in different areas. So food is not as cheap as some of the other Asian countries. Activities, maybe not as cheap either. Accommodation varied quite a lot. Not too expensive. But then you got the Angkor Wat thing, which we did all like 3 days of, paying tuk-tuks, renting a bike ourselves, getting the tickets as well. So that's kind of what's bumped up the cost here. But look, it's another affordable country, and I can get 56 euros per day. Next up is going to be Indonesia. So Indonesia, Bali is specifically, it can be cheap as well. Like if you're not going to the beach clubs and stuff like we weren't doing, it's a very affordable place to be. Accommodation, if you're not getting your own private villa and stuff, depends on what your budget is. Like it's not too expensive. Food is quite cheap. Beer is relatively cheap as well. Just some of the things. Yeah, there's a lot of activities to do in Bali. There's a lot of things you can sign up to do. So that's what kind of brings up the cost here. The cost of living there is very, very low, but yeah, activities, it definitely brings it up in Indonesia. Next up is South Korea. So South Korea is an affordable place. Again, like I feel like these things would be, when you get to the European ones, there's a bit of a significant gap. So South Korea is one of the most developed countries in the world. They have high jobs, high standard of living. They've got a lot of industry and high wages, but yeah, stuff there is really affordable. Clothes, food, alcohol is pretty affordable too, unless you're going to like fancy bars and stuff. Activities, we did a couple of activities as well in South Korea as well. A lot of them are actually free. You just kind of go to them, just like viewings and stuff. We went to the border as well, so yeah, that's pretty reasonable. I think for South Korea is at 61 euros 50. So I think that's actually pretty affordable, to be honest. Again, it could be way more if you wanted it to be. That's just kind of what we spent. So next up is Thailand, which is surprisingly more expensive than South Korea for us, at 64 euros per day. So Thailand, yes. Alcohol is not as cheap as Southeast Asia. Like even in Bangkok, if you want a pint of beer, and not a bottle of local stuff, but like a pint of like local stuff, you're paying 4 or 5 euros for it. So Thailand is not like that cheap when it comes to alcohol. It really catches people out. You end up spending quite a lot if you're going out quite a lot. Activities are relatively between 30 to 50 euros as well. Accommodation can actually also be quite expensive because we were there at peak times in January, especially around Christmas and New Year's. It was quite expensive. So that's something that kind of caught us. If you want to go cheap though, you can do it as cheap as possible. Like if you want to stay in hostels, you want to get kind of maybe worse accommodation, you can definitely get a lot cheaper, and you can survive off Grab or go to markets and get like 1-2 euro meals. Like, so Thailand is kind of as expensive as you make it, but yeah, that's what ours came out to while we were away. So yeah, Thailand was relatively expensive for us. So next up, we're getting into the European countries. Greece is up first at 69.50 per day spent. Look, Greece, again, I say alcohol relatively expensive, food inexpensive for the most part compared to European standards. Activities, range between 40 to 90 euros, depending on what you want to do. But again, yeah, Greece, we stayed in Airbnbs. If you want to stay in hotels and stuff, your price will go way up. We're also, spent a lot of time in Thessaloniki, which is not maybe a touristy city for the most part. It's kind of a bit off the beaten track, which means it's kind of more affordable. We didn't go to the more popular islands. We stayed in Crete, and Crete was amazing. I'd love to go back there. It's a great place, unbelievable food, great weather, great beaches. So yeah, Greece again. That's just a budget that we kind of came out for Greece, but yeah, I loved it. Can't recommend it enough. Next up was our first destination, Portugal, because comes in at 70 euros per day spent. So yeah, Portugal, same as Greece really overall, for everything quite similar. Yeah, I'd recommend Lisbon to anyone. It's a great city to be in, now getting a massive nomad boom, so it's getting more and more expensive to live in Lisbon. But yeah, same as Greece really, there's nothing kind of different about it. So yeah, next is Japan, 89 euros per day. So Japan could be a lot less than this. Japan is a very affordable place to go now. Especially now, even since we went, the currency is nearly down 15% from when we went, so now it's 15% cheaper. One thing though that is gotten more expensive there is hotels. So hotels now are actually more expensive than when we were there, but you're eating out, you're drinking, you're going out, your activities and stuff, because it's all in Japanese yen, is now cheaper than what it was when we were there. So also, what kind of adds this up to make it a bit more is going on the bullet trains. They're quite expensive if you're going one ways. The Japan Rail Pass is not really functional anymore because they put it up 70%. We also rented a car for a week. So again, that really kind of puts it up. That's something you don't need to do in Japan, but it's something we really wanted to do. So that's kind of what brought it up. But yeah, I would say you could easily knock off 20 euros per day on this if you wanted to get that and still do kind of everything we did, but without the car, maybe sacrificing a bullet train or two, and finding maybe cheaper accommodation. You'd definitely be able to do that. But so yeah, Japan, you can do it for a lot cheaper than what that is, and I do recommend driving around there if you want to go to some of the more remote parts that you maybe wouldn't go to if you are only relying on public transport, although it is amazing there. You're not going to have a problem with public transport. Next is the Amalfi Coast in Italy that we went to. This comes in at 107 euros per day. So this is more expensive because we were with our families, we were doing everything. Accommodation was expensive. You're on the Amalfi Coast, one of the most desirable places to go in the whole world for vacations and holidays. So yeah, of course, the cost of living in Italy is a bit lower than Ireland, but on the Amalfi Coast, it was pretty expensive for food and stuff, alcohol, your general living and activities. Yeah, it comes up. It was a pretty expensive place to go, but can't recommend it enough again. And yeah, number one, probably no surprise, is Singapore at 111 per day. So what really caught us here was we were there for the Grand Prix and accommodation was really, really expensive. Singapore actually has a lot of food markets and stuff, so you can get more cheap food, and yeah, that's a massive saver for you. You can definitely save a lot in Singapore if you really, really want to. But yeah, it was just our timing that really kind of screwed us for the accommodation prices. But if you want to go partying and alcohol, all that kind of stuff in Singapore, be prepared to pay for it. Activities are reasonably priced, really, to be honest. They were similar enough prices to European prices. So look, hopefully you found this video informative, and it basically tells you how much roughly each place is, and you can give you a bit of a rough guide on how much you're going to spend in each place too. So look guys, thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.